Hi, peace be upon you, folks. This is a video I did back in, I think it was 2017. At the time, I had done basically no editing of the video because in my spirit, I felt like there was some urgency to it. Like there was an event that was going to happen all of a sudden, and I needed to get it out as soon as possible. I used to be one of those people who would go over Bible prophecies, other types of prophecies, go over Islamic writings, and try to study the prophecies and see what comes to pass. But the more I look at the world we live in, the more I try to analyze prophecy and look at the actors involved, the countries, their leaders. The more I was led to believe around 2017 that in fact we are living in a grand deception. We are living in that basically everything we live in could be a lie, right? Most of the books we have, and the prophecies, they were given to us, and we have no ways of verifying whether these things were true. And so it could be that after printing was invented in less than 200 years ago or so, most of these writings came to our midst, and they've been altered for somebody else's agenda. So that it's like if we all believe something is going to happen, right? Then, and somebody could have a grand conspiracy to enact these things so that it looks like these things are happening, but in fact all the actors involved are working for the same person. So for me, I came to that conclusion that in fact all the leaders and all the divisions that we are looking at, that we think we should be part of one instead of the other, in fact they all serve the same master, they serve the same agenda. That was the conclusion I came to around in 2017. Anyway, so this is I'm redoing the video. Well, I'm just editing it. My opinion has changed a little bit since that time on certain issues, but I feel like maybe it's about time I edited it a little bit more instead of just having a black screen for the whole of the video. So there goes. I hope you enjoyed and you take something away from it. Hi, peace be upon you, folks. Today, I have a few topics I'm going to talk about. I'll start off by giving a few hadiths, which are narrations of the Prophet and his companions. And then I'll give you an outline of the topics I'm going to talk about. And hopefully by the end of this, I'll tie the topics together nicely in a chronological way. I hope, because it's a lot of topics, but I think it can be done. All right, the first hadith I would like to talk about is the hadith of one of the companions of the Prophet at the time of the Prophet in Arabia. They traveled by ship and they landed on an island, and on that island they met a being that was covered with hair so much. It had hair all over its body, so much that it was hard to distinguish its back from its front. Remind you of Bigfoot? So this being led them to like a monastery, um, and then they met a huge man, heavily built, and this man interrogated them like, "As the last messenger come?" And they said yes, and he says, "Oh yeah." So something he said something like, "Nice. So it will soon be, and I'll be free," because at that time he was tied. He was chained. His neck, his hands were chained to his neck, and he was, But the 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 beast, the Bigfoot looking beast, was called Jasasa, which it means spy. So I guess that's its assistant. So it interrogated them, and he said, "Oh, okay. If the last prophet has come, then maybe it wouldn't be long now. Then I'll be free." Initially, I thought, maybe it's a dream that he had and was interpreted. But the hadith didn't seem like it was a dream. It was narrated as if the man actually went to an island and met this
this Bigfoot and this huge, heavily built man who was in the monastery. That man, we find out now, his name is the Dajjal, the Antichrist, the one-eyed man. But then there's another hadith also that talk about the prophet, how he suspected one Jewish boy in Arabia that he might be the Dajjal. All right. Now I don't know if it's a difference in timing. Maybe he didn't have enough information at the time when he suspected the Jewish boy. But they left the narration there, so that has been puzzling a little bit. Like if there is a man already chained, how can another Jewish boy be the Dajjal, the Antichrist, the lying Messiah, the imitating Messiah? Hopefully, I'll be able to tie that together in a way that makes sense. All right. Now, another hadith. In another hadith, it said that the prophet said, every prophet, every messenger told his people about the Antichrist, the Dajjal. Now, I've said this before, that would make sense that he would probably tell them also about the Messiah, the actual Messiah, Isa, Jesus, the son of Mary. So, we believe that God has sent over 100,000 prophets to every nation. And if he's saying every messenger, every prophet told, or every prophet told his nation about the Dajjal, all right? So it means that every people have some sort of information. And he also said, but he will tell us something no nation was told before, that the Dajjal is one-eyed. He's blind on the left eye. The left eye is like a bulging grape. All right? So we know that. And he's a heavily built man. In another hadith, the prophet is said to have talked about Gog and Magog. He said there's a creation of people, a type of people that God has created, a type of creation of God that nobody can defeat, nobody can beat. So Gog and Magog, when they come, nobody will be able to defeat them, and that's why the Messiah and the believers will flee to the mountains, and then God would punish Gog and Magog with plague, like with the boils that would kill them, and then the birds would come and carry their bodies away. And he said, Gog and Magog, they're gonna shoot arrows into the sky with the intention of killing the gods. And then God will send the arrows back with like blood, well, basically like evidence that, oh yeah, you succeeded, just to get them in. In another hadith, the prophet said on the day of judgment, Adam, the first man, the first prophet, would be shown to the people. All the creation would be lined up in rows. All the human beings would be lined up in rows, and the jinn kind as well. The jinn kind is what people think are fallen angels, and I've made another post about this, and I've given the difference that they're not fallen angels. They're just a different kind of creation. So you can get that information from somewhere else. But basically, Adam is shown to the people, and God will say something like, here is your father, and he will say to Adam, here are your children. And he will say to Adam, pick the dwellers of hell. And Adam would look and say, how many of them? It says 999 out of every 1,000. So 0.1% of the people will make it to paradise. All right? Which is similar to the narration of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. It's probably in the other Gospels, where I think Jesus, quoting the Gospel, all right, says, I'll pick you 1 out of 1,000 and 2 out of every 10,000. That 1 out of 1,000, I believe, means 1 out of every 1,000
people will go to paradise.
Now, in the other hadith, the prophet says that 999 of the people that will go to hell out of every 1,000, they would be from Gog and Magog. So basically, we're saying 99.9% of the hell of the people are from Gog and Magog who will dwell in hell. And you'll be like, well, the math doesn't add up, probably you would think. But hopefully, by the time I tie this all up, it would make a lot of sense. Now, let me give you a few verses from the Quran. I'm not going to be able to quote it word for word. I'm getting it out of my head right now. All right. But basically, Allah says in the Quran, it says, I'll give them time because my plan is firm. Allah says also in the Quran, it says, you cannot cause failure to Allah on the earth or in the heavens. All right. Allah says also in the Quran, it says, the disbelievers are an object of a plan. Then in another section of the Quran, Allah was telling us about the argument of the dwellers of hell. So when one party would be sent to hell, because they'll be sent in degrees, right? Each party, when the other one comes and meet them, they would scorn each other. Basically, they would like how do you say, like, you want to tease somebody, you want to mock them. So when one party comes, he will say, "Oh, you, the people who were deceived by their leaders," they would say, "You are leaders. You caused this to us." And the leaders, they will say, "No welcome for you here." It's like a mocking thing. And the leaders would turn back to them and say, "Neither for you. There is no welcome for you." And they would say, "You are leaders, brought this upon us." And the leaders will look to them and tell them something to the effect, "Well, God has judged between us. Because if God is just and he has seen you fit to be here with us, then you can't just put the blame on us." And the people who were deceived by their leaders will say, "Rather, it was your conspiracy by night and day."
When you were ordering us to disbelieve.
Now, when I saw that verse, for me, I've always been like conspiracy, but I always thought, yeah, these leaders, for example, when Moses came to Pharaoh, of course the leaders plotted, like, "No, man, this guy, we can't believe him. Here's what we're gonna do to make sure it doesn't succeed." So yeah, I get it. But it always kind of, like, I think, stuck with me, like, maybe it's bigger than just any ordinary conspiracy. So the ones who were deceived will say, "Rather, it was your conspiracy by night and day when you were ordering us to disbelieve." So it's like they're specifically saying you were ordering us to disbelieve through your conspiracy. And then the leaders who deceived the people would say something else to the effect that if we ourselves were guided, we would have guided you. Like, we misled you just as we were misled. All right? Pay attention to that. They misled you just as they were misled. And Allah says in the Quran, "None can inform you like one that is acquainted with all things." And who is more acquainted with everything except the Creator, right? The one who is all-knowing. He knows what's going to happen from the beginning to the end. Then the ones who the leaders who were deceiving the people, they would also say, "You yourself were wrongdoers. It's not like we force you to disbelieve. We present to you things that were pleasing to your heart, and then you preferred them to the truth. You preferred your music, you preferred your fornication, you preferred your wine, you preferred your gambling. None of you. So how can you blame us? You preferred to be led astray anyway. So therefore we led you astray." That being said, I've given you a few verses. I've given you a few because I think those are important in the stories, right, as we go on. Now, the topics I'm going to deal with, all right? I'm going to start off with the story of Adam and Eve in paradise before the fall. Then, then from there. No, actually, first what I'll do is I'll take you through what I thought was where I thought was Gog and Magog, and why I think I know where it is now. Then I'll talk to you about the story of Eve. All right, and maybe you don't think those have anything to do with each other. And throughout the discussion, I'll take lessons from the Surah Kaf, the chapter in the Quran, the 18th chapter. It's called the Cave. All right. Throughout this talk, I'll try to bring lessons from that chapter. Now, after talking about Gog and Magog and my theories before, and then Eve, I would likely talk to you about magic, numerology, and things like that. And then I'll talk to you about maybe the dome, in fact, or flat Earth. We'll see. All right. Let's see if we can dwell into this. So initially, when I was looking at the hadiths for Gog and Magog, the narrations for Gog and Magog, some people think it's Russia and things like that, but we'll come to that. It's all a deception. All right. So I thought, let's look at because from Surah Al-Kahf, all right, they talk about Dhul Qarnayn, basically the owner of two horns. It's a representation of the fact that he owned the ends of the earth. And Allah says in the Quran, "We established him upon the earth, and we gave him to everything away." That's what Allah says in the Quran. All right. Now, in Islam, we believe these were the two people God gave the whole earth. Dulkarnain, all right, and Sulaiman alayhi salam, the son of Dawood, the son of David. All right. So so the Jews and the Christians, they used to come to the prophet with questions, to prove that, yeah, he's indeed a messenger of God. Like, would he know this and this? So a lot of people have assumed Dhul-Qarnain is Cyprus. And that's possible. I'm not saying that's not possible. But then the history we have of Cyprus, right? It tells us that he moved from the Persian area, the Iran, Afghanistan area. Then he moved towards Turkey, right? That's what they tell us. And then from Turkey area, he migrated towards I think the Caspian Sea, and then towards the deserts of the deserts of Europe, all right? And then downwards towards the Indus area, and then back to the Babylonian area, and then to Egypt. But according to the history we have, they said he wasn't able to conquer Egypt, which is not what God says in the Quran, right? So, but let's be patient. Let's see if this is going to make sense. So I also, when I was looking at it, I thought, okay, maybe Cyprus is the guy. So according to the Quran, and from the Surah Kaf, the Surah of the cave, Dhul-Qarnain followed the way until he came to the setting of the sun. So basically, he was traveling west, right? And maybe he reached like the sea, so it appeared like he had reached the place where the sun set. So that's the assumption I made, right? And then he traveled again, and then he came to where the sun rose, and he found it rising on a people that God said we have made from a people of which we had made no shield against the sun. And then I assumed, well, maybe it's a desert. So I assumed the European desert area. I think like the Budapest desert. I think that's what they are. All right. Then he said he followed the way until he reached a pass between two mountains, and he found near them a people. And the people could hardly understand speech. All right. And these people told him that indeed Gog and Magog are corruptors in the land. So they needed a barrier to prevent Gog and Magog from reaching them, And then Dhul-Qarnain did that. And then he told them, he said, this is a mercy from my Lord. But when the promise of my Lord comes, he would render this barrier level. And he told them, ever is the promise of my Lord true. So with the assumption that it's Cyprus, and with the assumption that the history that we've been told is true, I assumed the first place, the setting of the sun, is probably Turkey area, and maybe that's still true. All right, but as far as where the two mountains, I thought it was somewhere. It was gonna be somewhere. At first, I thought maybe the mountains of Europe separating Turkey area from Bulgaria and places like that. And then later I thought, wait a minute, because God says when the day comes and the dam that Dhul-Qarnain had created, when that dam is leveled, then Gog and Magog would descend from every elevation. But I'm thinking, sometimes when you say every elevation, maybe it just means like from high places. But I looked at the word, and the word, God has used different words in the Quran for elevation, for a mountain and things like that. I looked at the Quran, and the word, it seemed like the word appeared to mean every curved elevation. So the mountains are of different types. So then I assumed maybe it's a plateau, like around the Nepal area, and maybe even the Mongols and the Huns were Gog and Magog. That's what I assumed. And it's possible that they're more closely related to Gog and Magog than the rest of the people, because Gog and Magog, indeed, they plundered, they raped, they pillaged. So they're bound to have children. And we know that a lot of the people of Earth, for example, they have their lineage from Genghis Khan. So most of us, anyway, so the prophecy, like I said before, I say sometimes the prophecies have dual fulfillment sometimes. Sometimes the fulfillment first comes in terms of metaphorical, so that people's attention is drawn to it, all right? And then it fulfills in the actuality, like the second part. That's what sometimes I think happens. So I assumed maybe it's Gog and Magog is like the Mongols or the Huns, But then the prophet had said nobody can defeat these people. I mean, the Mongols were good, man, but They were defeated at some point. It's not like nobody can defeat them. But then I thought again, maybe, since a lot of them share bloodlines and they are the same people, if they defeat each other, then, it's not like somebody has defeated Gog and Magog. They still, even the White Horns of Hungary, a lot of them still have that root. So I'm like, okay, maybe. And then I thought, maybe Gog and Magog, they're trapped under a cave system that spans a large area of the earth, all right? Like these mountains and caves. And indeed, I think some of Gog and Magog, they are in some of those other mountains, but a majority of them, I think, are behind the dam. So it's just like if you have a nation, sometimes there are people who are outside. Not everybody has to be in the country at the same time. You know what I mean? So that was my assumption. But that assumption, it was difficult to tie it with
999 out of 1,000
would be from Gog and Magog. All right. But now we'll go towards what I think it is, and let's see if we can take it slowly in a way that makes sense. In another hadith, the Prophet says, peace and blessings be upon him, said, if you imitate a people, you would be resurrected like those people. So on the day of resurrection, when the people will be judged, all right, they'll be judged by nations. And for example, the nation of Adam would be the people who believed in Adam and followed Islam while Adam was their prophet. The people of Noah the nation of Noah would be the Muslims who followed Noah at his time, up to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be upon all the prophets and all the messengers. All right. Then the other nations also would be judged. Now, if all the dwellers of hell are from Gog and Magog, then it means it has to do something with the fact that indeed Gog and Magog and all these nations, they've imitated Gog and Magog in a way that they are of them. You know what I mean? So indeed, they would be resurrected with Gog and Magog and they would be judged with Gog and Magog. All right, but how come? How is it that they imitated them? In what way? Remember this. He said, they're great corruptors on the land. All right, and now it's not just a typical small type of corruption. This is a big conspiracy. Now, before I tell you what I think Gog and Magog is and who they really are, all right, let's look at the story of Eve, Adam and Hawa in paradise. And let's see if we can learn a story from that. And I said the story of Eve not because I want to take the what has become the Christian perspective, that Eve was first tempted and she tempted Adam. We don't have that. All right, we just know that both of them disobeyed God. So God had told them that stay away from this tree. But if you look at the chapter, it's called it's the second chapter of the Quran. It's called Baqarah. It's the surah of the cow. All right. If you look at the chapter, it says God said to the angels that He's going to create a successive authority upon the earth. So God was going to create somebody upon the earth. That was His plan all along, and we know God is all-knowing. In fact, that's why in Islam, one of the central beliefs in Islam, one of the 6 articles of faith, is to believe in predestiny. All right, it doesn't mean people don't have free choice. All right, this is just let's not get into that because it's not the topic of that. This is not that's not the topic. All right, but God had a plan all along. All right, so what God did was He taught Adam. He didn't just send him to earth. He taught Adam. He let him live in paradise, let him know that this is what he was meant for. This is a good place. What happened? The deceiver deceived him. It says, now I'm going to go to the Bible narrations, all right? And as far as I believe them, all right? So basically he came to them and he said, God has only forbidden you this tree because He doesn't want you to be immortal. So basically, He's promising them immortality, things like that. All right. Whereas God was going to resurrect Adam anyway after his death, and then he would be immortal after that. If you want to look at immortality in that sense, but this was the plan of God all along. God is not unaware. All right. He allowed this. So God says in the Quran, it says, Satan deceived them and let them fall from that condition in which they were in. It said after they ate from the tree, their private parts became apparent to them. For me, it was always like, why did their private parts become apparent? Were they doing like some kind of, God forgive us because He is a prophet. Let's forget about that. All right. So I'm thinking, but in Islam, for example, you talk about symbolism, right? Or dreams and symbolisms and prophecies like that. Clothing is your religion because your religion covers you. All right. Basically, that's how you see it. Clothing is your religion. So once they ate from their tree, they were stripped of their religion. They were stripped from that grace that they had. But then God showed Adam how to repent. So God didn't leave Adam alone. He gave him words to repent, and then Adam repented, and God accepted his repentance. But then God sent them on earth, and he told them, I would send you messengers from time to time with guidance, and whoever follows my guidance will be guided. But now here's why I say the story of Eve initially. When they had eaten from the tree, Eve was so surprised. Is that she's like, I can't believe somebody swore to God and lied. Like this man was telling us all these things and he was swearing to God, and I can't believe he lied. It shows you the naivety. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's her innocence. Let's use that word. That she couldn't think somebody could deceive so much. That being said, this is why the tree, in fact, it's a tree of deceit, basically. And I believe that tree is a tree of black magic. I'll explain why I think that. All right. But basically, the idea is that magic is deceit. All right. And the devil is always going to deceive you with magic by coming to you with promises. Okay. But then one might say, all right, well, why did God create the tree? Because people like to ask questions, and sometimes people like to argue about something just for the sake of argument. Sometimes it's not enough to say this message is true, but it's like, okay, well, why is this part this, that part this? And sometimes I understand. If you have an innocent doubt, that's normal. You're a human being, all right? But to argue for the sake of argument is bad sometimes. But so if you want to ask, for example, why was this tree created anyway if it's a deceitful tree? Well, God had a plan all along. That's one. And God is all wise. In Islam, we say God is exalted. So he's so far above any kind of comprehension. How can I explain this? You live on earth. The lowest heaven is the lowest heaven, obviously. There are 7 heavens. So every heaven, they have laws and all that. And every heaven is better than the one next to it. And in the hadith, they tell you that the levels of heaven, the degrees in heaven, all right? I don't know if it's each heaven or together the 7 heavens, there are 100 degrees, or each heaven has 100 degrees. Between a degree and between 2 degrees, they say it's like the distance between the heavens and the earth. So basically, all right, the difference in wealth that people with from different degrees would have in the hereafter is greater than beyond comprehension. But everybody's going to be happy. Everybody's going to be pleased. Nobody's going to be like, oh, he's too rich and I'm too poor. All right. The poorest person in heaven is beyond comprehension on this earth, for example. And that's why the prophets compare this earth to carcass, so like a rotten animal. So those who fight for this earth, they're fighting over a rotten animal. Now, if that's how the degrees of heaven are, can you understand even everything from this lowest heaven, the universe that you call the universe? Probably not. What about the heaven above it? You don't even know the rules of the heaven above it. What about the heaven above that one? What about the throne of God that is above all the heavens? That has all the throne, basically, that controls, that God submits the throne and controls everything with the throne. All right? How can you understand the throne? It's so exalted even above the heavens. Now, what about God, who is above the throne in terms of like his exaltedness? Because we don't think of God like a person, like who's bound by space and time, because he created space and time. So you get it, I think. But so when we say God is exalted, that's what we mean. Like, he's so far beyond that kind of comprehension. But yet again, also, he can make himself known. That's how powerful he is. And I say that because people should assume good about God. And just because you don't know the reason doesn't mean there's no reason behind it. And that's why even in the Surah Kaf, there are lessons to be learned from that. For example, when Moses was traveling with now people have been quoting him as Al-Qadr, which is like the green. The Quran doesn't say Al-Qadr, but the translations have started saying Al-Qadr. And I found out that there's also a similar person in Hindu tradition. Now, it might be true because, like we said, there were over 100,000 prophets to the people. So once upon a time, the people had the truth, and then they were deceived. All right, and then the scriptures were changed, the rituals were changed. They made it so that it looked like the truth, and so you're pleased about it, but it's not the truth. Just like how magic is an imitation of truth. Magic is not a real thing; it's an imitation of truth. All right. But that might be true, and maybe and maybe it's the same man, but the Hindu tradition had, had been changed a little bit by the device and the plans and the conspiracy of the devil. All right, we don't know. So it's possible. I'm not saying that's not possible, but I'm very suspicious of that now, because there's an agenda that has India, that India seems to be in the center of. You see, even the CERN, right? The physics, the equipments they're making in order to create the particles. Man, I'm getting blocked right now. But we know what CERN is, all right? So the India gave them the statue of, I think it was Shiva, the destroyer, well, the new beginning, the god of new beginning. So we know there's a central thing, and we know that most of these leaders have been deceived. Don't even think because Saudi Arabia, they're not deceived or not, they're not deceived. Most of them have been deceived, and most of them follow Gog and Magog. We'll talk about that. So whatever the case, whoever this man is, he had some knowledge that even Moses didn't have, because Moses is one of the best prophets of God, but his work that he had to do, he didn't need that knowledge. All right, not because God gave you more knowledge on this earth means you're better than the other person, or because God gave you many miracles, because it's not the prophet that performs the miracles. It is God that gives the prophet the miracles so that people can believe, and the people don't believe by their own power. God makes you believe by his mercy. All right, based on maybe what he sees in your heart, if he finds goodness in your heart, if he has found righteousness in you. It's not by your power that you're going to believe. And that's why you see some people, they easily believe, they get excited. That is a risky belief. In fact, there's a story of Jesus and the man who sowed the seeds, right? Some people are quick to rejoice, but then they're quick to abandon the faith as well. And that's why in Islam we contemplate. All right, we don't go to the prayer or place of worship and sing and dance. Yes, when you sing and dance, you get happy and you feel like you've achieved something. You feel like you're elevated. You feel like your faith has been renewed. No, this is a deception. This is a manipulation. You're a human being. You're supposed to walk upright. You're not supposed to be led with your face on the ground. You're supposed to lift your head up, look for the way, and follow it. And in fact, God is going to turn some people into animals according to some beliefs. An animal resembling who their nature is. Because God created you as a human being, gave you a human soul, and then he proportioned you as a human being. He didn't leave you alone. He gave you opposable thumbs. He gave you erect, upright status, right? And then he gave you intellect. And then you have an experience. But how many of us learn from the experience, right? And the experience is essential, because we know that. How many of us, when we grew up, we were like, man, I remember when I was a teenager, I thought I knew so much. That alone should tell you that, wait a minute, if somebody comes to me with information, I should be patient. And let's see if it's a true information or not. Let me not just try to argue against it, because maybe he's telling me I should stop drinking, and I don't want to stop drinking. I like to drink. I like to party. I like to mingle with girls. So I don't want to hear it. But what if it's the truth? The truth should be preferable to your desires. And your experience should tell you that there's something you may not know. So I'm not saying accept the information blindly. Obviously not. That would mean you're not acting like a human being, and you're a human being. So act like a human being. All right. So contemplate the Quran, and that's all God is telling you. He said, God asked several times in the Quran, like, we give the people several examples, but the people refuse everything except disbelief. The message is not something foreign to the nature of truth. It's not something foreign to your nature. But how many people have really taken the time to listen to it and have it explained to them? And if you still don't believe in it, then hey, at least you've listened fairly, not with. So now back to Moses. Moses followed this man who God has given a certain type of knowledge. All right, and they were traveling, and then all of a sudden the guy put a hole in the boat. The people gave them a ride, and then the guy put a hole in the boat. But before they left, the guy had told him, he said, I don't think you will be patient with me. With me, you would never be able to be patient. And Moses said, you would find me, I think, if Allah wills, that I would be patient. And then the man told him, he's like, all right, if you follow me, do not ask me about anything until I tell you what it means, okay? And then Moses agreed. So when they were traveling, they embarked on a ship, and then the guy put a hole in the ship. And then Moses is like, oh, whoa, what have you done, man? You put a hole in the ship to drown the people. And then the guy reminded him. He said, did I not tell you you would not be able to be patient with me? And then Moses said, all right. All right, my bad. Then they traveled again. They met a boy. The man killed him. I think he snapped his neck. And Moses is like, whoa, have you killed a pure soul that has not done anything wrong? And then the man is like, did I not tell you would not be able to be patient with me? And then Moses is like, all right, if I ask you again, then okay, you can kick me out. Like you can dismiss me, It's my mistake again. Then they traveled and they came to a town. They met a wall that it was about to collapse. All right, when they came to the town, the people didn't give them hospitality. So they found the wall that was about to collapse, and then the man repaired the wall. After he repaired the wall, then Moses said, you could have taken payment for that. These people did not give us hospitality. If we had repaired the wall, you could have been paid. And then, at least we could have something. And then the man said, all right, this is it between me and you. Like, I'm dismissing you now, but I'll tell you the interpretation of the things that you were not patient about. It said the ship, it belonged to poor people who walked in the sea. But there was a king in the area who was seizing the ships, the good ships, by force. So he intended to cause defect in the ship so that the king would not seize the ship. You see, but Moses did not have that. Moses did not have that information. Then he said, as for the boy, all right, his parents
were believers,
but we feared, all right, that he would burden them with transgression and sin. So now he's talking about he didn't just do it on his decision. It's also God, So God intended that he would substitute for them a better son, one who is purer, because these are believing people. God wanted to give them a believing son, all right, a believing child. And then he said, as for the wall, it belonged to two orphans who lived in the town. But I think the orphans, there was a greedy man who was taking care of the orphans, and the orphans, their dad had kept treasure for them under the wall. And if this greedy man had seen the treasure, he would have seized it. All right. So Al-Qadr, now I call him Al-Qadr because we're so used to it. I don't want to assume that's what his name is. All right. So the man Moses was following said, so I repaired the wall so that when these kids reach maturity, then they can retrieve their treasure. This man would not steal it from them. So he didn't do it on his own. So again, sometimes people ask, why is there suffering in the world? And sometimes, like, let me tell you, I understand. All right, suffering. When it's easy to say, to give an answer like that, why is there suffering? But nobody likes suffering. Trust me. All right, but we should understand that everything belongs to God, and first of all, He will do whatever He wants with anything that He wants. But God is good. And everything that God does, there's a good intention. So even if something bad happens, God can make the outcome good without you knowing. Because God is exalted. His ways, they're beyond numbers. They're beyond comprehension. All right? So sometimes we see things that are suffering and we think, God is not good and that. But we don't understand the end goal of God. And God says in the Quran, will take you from state to state, all right? And through these states that God takes us through, He elevates us. If we rely upon Him, all right, because we don't have power. That's what God, I think, wants us to know, that we can only do this by His mercy. We don't have any power to do it on our own. But the thing is, sometimes when something comes easy to you, you tend to think, oh, why are the other people not refraining from this, Like, I'm going around like this. Why are all these people not doing like I'm doing? Because it came easy for you. And in fact, that's what deceives the devil. Because he had an image of righteousness. And so God allowed him to mingle with the angels. This was before the fall. All right. So he thought, he elevated himself. And God always knew. God knows our intentions. But He lets it go. He is patient. He would reveal. God says, we will try you until we make evident those who believe from those who do not believe. God knows who's going to believe and who's not going to believe based on our actions and all that. But He would make it evident by trials and tests, and you would see who comes out of that and who doesn't. So in fact, when God told the angels, it's like, and then God told the angels to prostrate to Adam, not in terms of praying to him, but like to submit themselves to his service, because God made him the successive authority upon the earth. Because the jinn kind, they had authority upon the earth, and Satan, Iblis, because he was so righteous or seemingly righteous, they allowed him, like he could hang out with the angels. And I think even before that, some of the jinns could hang out with the angels, although they were like really bad ones. So every now and then, I think they would destroy them and whatnot. So even some of the Veda texts that talk about the angels, some of them are true, but it doesn't mean the angels and the jinns are similar. It's just like when the angels come to the prophets, for example, they come in human form, all right? Because the angel, his true form, I don't think the earth can stand it. If an angel comes on earth in his true form, I think it would eviscerate the earth. It would evaporate it. All right. So it's possible that they would mingle with the jinns in a manner that looked to them like they were also jinns. Like, oh, we're not too far from each other. You know what I mean? But they're totally different. The angel in his true form is not comparable to a jinn kind. So Satan, he thought he was better than everything. He thought, oh man, God has elevated me. So when God told him to prostrate to Adam, he said, no, I can't do that. He said, I'm better than him. You created me from fire and you created him from clay. Like, obviously, why would I prostrate to this one? Why would I be at his service? I'm better than him. So God said, oh, so you have always been arrogant? So God knew, but God was going to make evident who believes from who doesn't believe. Get it? So then God passed a judgment, and then Satan made it his duty to deceive the son of Adam. Why? He wants to prove that he's better than you. So he's not going to rest. God says in the Quran, they see you from where you do not see them. And they take the amount of human beings on the earth, the jinn kind, they're more than that. They're more than us in number. And the angels obviously are more than that, are more than the jinn kind in number, because the angels take care of the affairs of nature, and you have 2 angels on your side, and the jinns have angels on their side too, because angels record your deeds. All right. So now back to the fact that back to the question about, okay, why would God create this tree? Well, we don't know the whole information about. We just know there was a tree. But what else do we know? God says in the Quran, we did not create the heavens and earth aimlessly. All right, that's the assumption of those who do not believe that, oh, this is just a joke thing, like it's a chaotic thing that just come out from nowhere, and then, who knows what's going to be its end goal, like. But we know it had a beginning. Anything that has a beginning, there must be something before that, like something at its beginning to give it its beginning. Time had a beginning. God gave time its beginning. So if you sit down and contemplate life, some of these things, God can reveal them to you. Like I say, it's not your power, all right? It's the mercy of God. So back to and we know that, and God said, yes, I did not create the heavens and earth aimlessly, all right? I did it so that every soul can be recompensed for what it earned. So the heavens and earth is a system of accountability, all right? It's a system of records. Your actions have consequences in the heavens. They create a disbalance. They disturb the harmony. And obviously, the universe is going to try to balance that. It's just like if you have a system in equilibrium. If you change the equilibrium, the system is going to try to balance the equilibrium. All right. So the whole universe is set up in a system of justice, in a system of reward. In fact, they tell you that on the day of judgment, God is going to tell you that I give you back your deeds. And God says, I do not wrong. God is never unjust to the servant. So it's not like God is being unjust. He's giving you back the things you did on earth. That's all he's doing. He's paying you back. So the people in hell, that's all he's going to say. I give you back your deeds. So I don't want to speculate on how the tree came there and why the tree is there. But let's just know that our actions have consequences. And, maybe, like, for example, if you praise God, they tell you that the trees in heaven, they're made of words like Subhanallah wa bihamdi. It's hard to comprehend it in this life. But basically, your words have actions. Words are powerful. Nowadays, words are meaningless for people. And the deceivers are counting on that. They want us to lose all meaning in life. Because their goal is to imitate truth. Is to create a reality that imitates the reality of God. Their own paradise. Because they know, they don't want the paradise. Because they think they're better than Adam. They're never going to bow to Adam. In fact, you know what? The Prophet, according to some hadith, he's asked, what can Satan do for God to forgive him? And God said he can go to the grave of Adam and bow there. Satan would not do that. So he could do that, but he didn't. He doesn't want to do that. All right? And even when you look at these occults, and that's why sometimes people talk about oh, these leaders are enemies to each other. None of them are enemies to each other. Yes, maybe they're part of a game, all right? Some part of duality, of balance, because there's some sort of duality, but God has information about that, all right? The truth is with God. You, you see some of them talk about the worshiping the sun or the black sun, you know. But basically, God says He created the night and then He extracted from it its light, its day. So God can create something and extract from it another thing. Something that might seem negative, all right, within a balanced system, it has its place in the knowledge and wisdom of God. But God has prevented some things from us because we cannot use those things in the balance that are needed. Now, so when you look at it, it looks like the tree is in fact the tree of deceit, is the tree of magic. It's an imitation of the reality. And once you eat from that tree, you're stripped from your religion because you've depended your and if you want to know about magic and black magic, I have another post on that. But basically you've said, I don't need God as a refuge. I don't need to depend on Him for my needs. I can go to magic. I would be powerful. I would have this, I would have that. And that's what the Satan promises you. Now let me give you another story. There was a man, he was going to cut down a tree because people were worshiping the tree. On his way, Satan met him. Satan disguised as a man, and he said, don't cut that tree. And the man is like, no, I'm going to cut this tree because people are worshiping this tree. And then Satan is like, hey, if you leave this tree, every day when you go to your house, under the bed, you would find, I think he said 3 pieces of gold. And he's like, and the man is like, are you serious? Something like that. And he's like, yeah, even right now, if you go, you'd find 3 pieces of gold. And then the man left the tree and he went and he found 3 pieces of gold. He was happy. The next day he went to look under his bed. He couldn't find anything. So he's like, I'm going to chop up this tree. And then Satan met him again as a man. He's like, no, you're not going to chop up this tree. He's like, oh no, I'm going to chop up this tree. But then Satan was able to overpower him. Why? Because initially when he was going to cut off this tree, he had done it for the sake of God. But for some reason, he was deceived by the world. Satan gave him money. And then he's like, okay, now I wouldn't cut off the tree. You were going to cut off the tree because people were worshiping it as a god. But now you're like, nah, because of gold. I mean, yeah, people can do that. You know what I mean? So now Satan could overpower him, which tells you some of your celebrities. They were promised this, they were promised that. So they thought, oh man, you know, but at the end, they're all going to be deceived. Your leaders, they're laughing at you. They think you're not in on it. They think they're in on it. And at the same time, the jinns are laughing at them. You know, but they don't know. So as much as they think you're stupid, the jinns think they're stupid. And as much as the jinns think they're intelligent, God is also laughing at the jinns because nobody is above God. All right? So it's like, while they're deceiving others, God is causing them to be deceived. So in a way, you can look at the deception of God as a good type of deception. All right? Because God says in the Quran, the outcome of every matter is with God. So you can do whatever you want. The outcome is going to be dependent on God. All right? And in fact, talking about the lesson from the man who was going to cut the tree, similar thing with your celebrities. You find that most of them, they speak arrogantly because that's the thing. In black magic, the jinns, and some of the jinns are also deceived because not all of them know. Satan and the descendants, he's because his company, because when God sent a command to the angels to prostrate to Adam, all right, God doesn't talk to human beings or jinns directly. Even the angels, not all of them he talks to directly. Like you have spirits, you have hierarchy, all right. The only, in fact, prophet that God spoke to directly was Moses. And in fact, there was a barrier between them. I'm not going to talk much about that, but like a hijab, like a barrier between. It's not like God talked to him directly. That would, I don't think a human being can stand that. All right. Yeah, so God would reveal by revelation, or He would send the angels as messengers to reveal. And when the angels come, sometimes they come as human beings, just like they came to Abraham and they came to Lot. But basically, the idea is when God sent the command to the angels to prostrate to Adam, it was a command for everything. God said He has submitted the heavens and the earth to mankind. That's how He honored us. Look at us. We're nothing, but He's giving us that honor. He's taught us the sciences, and He's put us above most of His creation. He's preferred us with a definite preference. He Himself said in the Quran. All right. So when the command came, Iblis and the descendants and some of his company, they decided no, they're not going to do that. They're better than Adam. And then so they were therefore in error. But Satan, Iblis, he was their leader. And so they made it their duty to deceive. And the other genes, they've been deceived too by Satan and his company. All right, because genes, they live a long time, but they don't live forever, except for Satan. God has allowed him to live until the day of judgment, like until when everything is started all over again. All right, so he is misleading even some of the genes who don't know. But he himself was never an angel. All right, angels cannot disobey God because they don't have free will. People know that, but yet still they thought he was an angel. He's not a light bearer. How can somebody who is in error bear light? Light shows you the way. Light, and it shows you the light. All right, this is a deception. He was never a light bearer. He was never an angel. In fact, the Quran compares the prophet to the one who lit a fire around the people. Then God took away their light. So it's like the Quran is that light, all right? But then after the prophet had brought it and has taught the wisdom and all that, then people started to stray again. The light was taken away from them. But it's a mistake and a deception to think Lucifer. I don't even want to call him that name because I don't even know what that name means. That's a name that is got from somewhere. Iblis, Satan, all right? He's not a light bearer. He cannot be a light. That's a deception. So again, back to black magic. They make you do ugly things, be arrogant, say things like I'm king of kings, and that's a forbidden name. But they make you do things that insult God in terms of black magic because you think that's where the power comes from. And then you take pride in it. Oh, I'm better than this. Look how much power I have. They're counting on that. All right. Look at how your celebrities act. All right. They act with arrogance. And most people are like, they look up to them. They throw themselves at celebrities. They think, oh man, if it's a celebrity, it's okay to fornicate with them. I mean, I can brag about it later. That's the kind of society we live in. They make you do detestable things. Eat dirt, eat feces, eat children, rape children. They're doing it. But at the end of the day, they're obviously going to deceive you. But then you see some of these celebrities when their time is up, all right? And that's the time they want to come on the side of God. That's the time they want to be heroes. They want to fight. Now that the jinn and the devil has deceived you and has taken away what he pretended he was giving you, now you want to pretend that you want to stand for God. So what happens when the jinn comes back to you and say, all right, I'm going to give you back your wealth? What, you're going to go back to talking down on the people and talking arrogantly? But here's the thing though. The jinns, they're counting on you believing the fact that they have your souls. Allah says in the Quran, Allah forgives all sins. It doesn't matter what you've done. Seek forgiveness. All right? Just ask forgiveness. And then give charity so that somebody is happy and then God is happy with you. But don't believe that your soul is with them. All right? But then don't do it just because now you lost. Let this be a lesson for you so that you can come back and hope never to go back to error and pray to God never to take you to error. Because as I said, it's not by your power, it's by the mercy of God. All right. So you depend on him and you tell him to help you to depend upon him. But the jinns don't have your soul. They're counting on you believing this to deceive you. God's mercy is boundless. So it doesn't matter what you've done. But you see, talking about magic, I told you, God is allowing them to be deceived because they chose error. All right. And I told you magic is an imitation of reality. But God says in the Quran, we dash the truth upon falsehood, and thereupon falsehood disappears. Because falsehood by nature is bound to disappear. And it makes sense. Like, that's why the Quran is like, people have to contemplate it. It makes sense. Falsehood by nature is bound to depart. It has no foundation. But let's see how, for example, God is deceiving them. All right. Take, for example, California. Most people think if we can explain it as a law of nature, then it's not by God. But who created the laws of nature? God created the mathematics of the universe. All right. So if he knows these people are going to go astray and he's seen it all the way in the future, all right, even if the punishment was to come for you 2 years ahead, all right, because of a certain thing you were going to do. He could delay that thing, even if there's 1 day left for you to complete that thing. He could delay it for another 2 years if he wanted. All right, so that the punishment would meet you when he wants. Or he could bring that thing to meet the punishments to you when he wants as well. It doesn't have to be the 2 years. All right. So here's the deception. Magic, all right, they believe in like planets and the stars. They believe the times of your birth, the geometry, and it's based on some truth, but it resembles the truth. I hope people are getting this. It's not based on truth. God is the owner of the truth. It just resembles the truth. But because they've depended on that, all right, they cannot change it. If there's a date for sacrificing things, they maintain that, for example, even if you find out, for example, you see. So in a way, God has trapped them in their deception, and they've analyzed the earth, and they've said, oh, these are energy points. So in fact, they're going to stick to those points even if, for example, an earthquake is coming. So you see, God is putting them in a prison and leaving them there where they think they're achieving something, but in fact they're achieving the plan of God. California has been expecting an earthquake for how long? Is it surprising that God has put some of the worst people in California? You know, so it's like he's even pointing to us that I'm going to punish you. Like, but you say, oh, it's a law of nature, you know, so it has nothing to do with God. Because the deception is so in you that it's hard to see anything beyond this false society, this false reality that they've created. And in Islam, we're not supposed to pursue something without knowledge, you know. So, for example, taking a stone and say, this gives you balance. And nowadays, you wrap it in nice technology. When you used to go back in Africa in the long days where people used to say primitive and all that, or even now, in fact, in like voodoo and some African juju, they tie these things and it's like it looks like a dirty thing, or it's not as aesthetic, you know, it's not as pretty. But then you do the same thing. You buy these rings with these stones that you don't even know what's the knowledge behind it, and you assume it's going to give you some benefit without any knowledge from God. But these, in fact, genes are using this, you know, but they're deceiving you. You know, you say, oh, yeah, I'm wearing this because, you know, it makes my mood better. It makes me feel balanced. You've depended on a rock that you don't have any knowledge about, why it causes you to feel the way you feel. Come on. So who is Gog and Magog? I believe Gog and Magog, in fact, are the giants, the ones you would call Nephilim. All right. And some people will say, well, but God wiped the earth, you know, during the time of Noah. Yeah, but the genes have existed also during the time of Noah. And the barrier I was telling you about, Dhul Qarnain, who people think is Cyprus, I don't know who it is. All right. God said he established him throughout the earth. He gave him to everything away. And in fact, maybe the history that we have right now, that his empire spanned from so and so, is maybe not accurate. I think his empire spanned the whole earth. And maybe even the idea of we have of a globe earth is not very accurate. It might be similar to the truth. Maybe the flat earth is not exactly the truth. But this is the thing about the deception. I studied physics in school. Now I have to analyze everything I thought I know, everything I thought I knew. So I think even after Noah, they started developing Nephilims again. You hear these stories about the Nordic countries, how Odin would come and mingle with the women. What do they say about Odin? He's one-eyed. We know that Dajjal is one-eyed. All right. So we know the genes, they come and manipulate with the women. But here's the thing. They have rules that they follow. And unless you break certain rules, they don't have power over you. So don't desire the jinn. Seek help from God. All right. Depend on God and God will protect you. And God will give you what you want. God has decreed for you this earth and is prepared for you a place in paradise. He didn't create you for here. Just be patient a little bit. But I think we should finish the talk and talk about the Gog and Magog and the Dajjal, how this all plays out, and wrap up the hadiths that I was talking to you about in the beginning. So I think Gog and Magog were there, and now what they say is an Arctic. Let's assume the Earth is a globe, all right? And they say there's a hole in the Arctic. It's very likely. And it's, in fact, I think when Dulkarnain built the barrier, it was a dam. So it's possible that water formed around it and ice formed around it. And the ice that's melting is not necessarily by global warming. And I'm not saying don't take care of your environment. God has made you a successive authority upon the earth. All right, you should take care of all the creatures. You should be reasonable. You should be moderate. You shouldn't destroy the things He's giving you. But this ice is gonna melt anyway, and in fact, they're melting it, thinking it's their plan. Now, I'll give you another example before I talk about the Dajjal and tie the stories out with the Dajjal and the Gog and Magog. All right. Here's a thing that happened when the prophet was in Medina. He had made a pact with some of the Jews. All right. The Jews betrayed that pact and aided the enemies to fight him. In fact, when the prophet called the judgment on some of the Jews, they said, your judgment is right. Like, because he was going to kill some of the guys who betrayed him. And that was the judgment. And they said, yeah, you're going to kill us, but your judgment is just. And today we know that treason, you could be killed for treason. All right? So, but here's the thing. Because of the error of the Jews, in their hearts, they thought, if we can't defeat this army, let's break our walls, let them not have enough of our things if they end up like inheriting it. So they destroyed their fortifications with their own hands, thinking they're achieving something. You see, so God allows the deceivers to be deceived because they plan to deceive others. So even when you look at CERN, some people will say, well, what if CERN is the one going to cause the flood? And it's possible they're going to use CERN to cause the flood. Because listen to this. With their magic, they're trying to change the creation of God. So if they know God is going to decree punishment, all right, and they believe in the stars, when they see the punishment coming, because some of these genes, they've lived long enough to see how God sends the punishment. So you hear about Planet X and things like that. So when they see these things coming from afar, all right, and I'll tell you again why we need telescopes. Because the genes now, they can't travel the heavens, all right, because the Quran said when the prophet was appointed prophet, the Quran tells us about the jinns, how they said they sought to travel through the heavens, but they found it filled with gods. So the heaven had been prevented from them. So that's the dome. So now you need to be able to see the heavens, you need telescopes. Humans think the jinns are helping them to study the heavens, but in fact the jinns cannot see the heavens as they used to. They cannot go and listen to the angels anymore, because they've been trapped here. All right. So your telescopes and all that is just for their service. Your nuclear weapons, that's for their service as well, because they believe when the angels come, they can fight the angels. I mean, Satan knows he can't, but he's deceived them to think they can. And they think the angels are similar to them in nature. So in fact, when you look at the Anunnaki story, how they say the Anunnaki come and they change the DNA of man, it might be based on truth. And if you want to know my stance on evolution and the creation of the universe, I have another video on that. But how do we think God works? He sends the angels as the forces of nature. Your DNA is your genetic information. So when God says He takes the souls when you sleep. So your consciousness is in God's hands. But God has not given us knowledge of the soul. So it's possible that when God, after the fall, all right, Adam's soul was to be sent on earth, not his physical body. So the creation on earth was to be manipulated so that Adam's soul can exist. Think about it. If the gods, as they say, or some other genes of angels created mankind by genetic modification, well, who created all the other creatures before that? Who created those genes? Who created those so-called gods? All right, they were all created by the one true God, who created the forms of all souls, who gave every soul its form, every soul, who sustains every soul, who gave everything its beginning. All right, and God said it detailed the creation of everything. If you look at the DNA, it's detailed information. All right, so God creates all the details. God is not unaware. God is not careless or reckless in his creation. So there is possibly some truth to it, and that's the thing about the deception of their magic. They make it resemble the truth, so it's still pleasing to you, but it's still a deception. Even when you look at the world they're trying to create, the paradise on earth they're trying to create, it's an imitation of what the earth would look like when the Messiah comes. All right, they say when the Messiah comes, the earth is going to produce its fruit. It's going to be beautiful. People are going to be rich. What are people? And in fact, there's a narration that tells you that in paradise, everybody would know his home in paradise like it's natural to him. And when you go, you don't need to begin to look for keys and begin to find or open the door. The door recognizes you, and if you want it open, it opens. Nowadays, we have technology, so people are like, yeah, I can see how God can do that. You see, God is, even at that, God is using technology to make us still believe, even though it's the genes and other people trying to deceive us to think, well, I mean, you could have paradise here. It's not like it's that much different, but in fact, it's very different. All right. So the same thing that God can use to lead one person astray because of his error, he can make another person believe with the same thing. All right. But they're trying to imitate that, but it's a false imitation. So you have nowadays, you can just clear. You have like a small card, and your door can just open. You know what I mean? Or you have a camera detection, and you can program the camera that whenever it sees me, let the door open. The door cannot read your thoughts, obviously. You do not have a psychological, you do not have a natural, innate connection with the door, but you've imitated that paradise. Now they have genetic modification, so the fruits are huge, they look pretty, but they don't taste as good. You know what I mean? And they cause cancer. So it's like they're imitating that paradise which they see, or let me not even say paradise, the paradise on earth which the Messiah is to bring, because even the paradise on earth which the Messiah is to bring is nothing compared to the real paradise which we would live in for eternity by the grace of God. All right. So you look at that and you say, oh yeah, the genetically modified food, they cause cancers and all that. Then they say, well, you know what? We can clone now. So even if you have cancer, you can harvest the clone, do a transplant. You would live forever. The day we know how to transfer consciousness and transplant a brain, what else do you need? So it's like they're promising you immortality, all right? And you think, but here's the thing, as I said before, we've not been given enough knowledge of the soul. What if the soul ages and the body is just a reflection of that? Because truth makes sense, all right? So a thing, when it goes through an aging process, it should reflect that it's aging. So just because your body is aging, all right, don't think if you put your mind in a new body, then you've understood everything there is to understand and you're going to feel all young and nice. And you would see some of them, they would talk about, oh yeah, they would resurrect the dead. Good luck with that. And some of them might even have met Hitler in one of those bunkers and stuff like that and think, well, it's true, they can resurrect the dead. Because that's part of the deception. And that's why they want their Messiah, all right? So that they can imitate the actual Messiah, and then the genes would submit to this Messiah. And nowadays they have all your information. You keep all your information on Facebook. They know how you feel with certain emotions, all right? They have your DNA. So they could make somebody look like they're resurrecting your parents and you believe like, oh man. Because here's the thing. People think life is the most important thing. You hear people say all the time, oh, these were the lucky ones who made it alive. Some cases, yes, they're the lucky ones. But sometimes death is a mercy. All right? Because you go into heaven. You go into God. Why do you want to stay here? You know? But all the plan is for us to depend on this life. So now, even when the Muslim narration of when Jesus raised because the woman was crying. She said she wouldn't leave her child's grave unless she's resurrected. Jesus resurrected the girl, according to the Islamic narrations. You know what the girl told the mom? Like, why did you do this to me? Do you know the pain I go through to die? And now you brought me here, so I have to go through it again? You see, but nowadays people don't think like that. All right. But here's the thing: they're not gonna resurrect the dead. Even these clones, they're just empty shells for genes to live in, to abide in. Because I think the dimension that the genes are in order to get their frequency and all that to come to a dimension, it's not all that easy. So sometimes they need these empty shells or people who are willing to let themselves be possessed, you know. And again, another thing about how God deceives them, all right? People are talking about CERN and how they're trying to tear the veil. Well, didn't Jesus, according to the gospel, already said, this heaven above us will disappear and the one above it will disappear? So even if at the end of the day, God causes the heaven to disappear because of their actions, yes, God is going to give them that burden, that error. They're going to carry that burden in terms of sin because that's what they plan. But in fact, they're carrying out God's plan because after the heaven is removed and the one above that, it's going to be a blessing for the believers because now the command of God, all right, you're now in a pretty much your status as elevated because now instead of having 6 heavens above you, now you only have maybe 4 or 5. You see what I mean? So in fact, the time is going to come when the Muslims are going to be so enlightened, and that's why it's good to read Surah Al-Kahf often on Fridays. All right, you're going to come to the time when you're going to be so enlightened that when the Antichrist comes, you're going to be able to see on his forehead written Dajjal. And I have another post, and I think it goes with this. You can watch them you can um, see them or listen to them independently. But I think they have information that both, because sometimes I don't want to dwell on what I dwelled on the other post here. But the information, I think they go hand in hand, but they can be independent. So yes, it's possible CERN will tear the veil. And while God is making them think that this is their plan, in fact, God is leading them more and more to deception. More and more to his plan. Because God says his plan is firm. He would give them time. God is seeing everything you do. God doesn't need to send the angels to kill you, but yet or for nature or for there to be disasters. But when those things happen, they want the ones who remain, right? So so God has a plan for everything. But if he wills, he could just tell your soul to die. He could just command your soul to die. He doesn't need to do much about it. So in their occult and in their what they think is knowledge, all right, they believe in certain things. And they think they can change the reality by imitating the truth and then maybe even reversing it. You see that even now people talk about the fact that sometimes they use words that you'd have to play backwards to get what they're saying. That's part of their belief systems. They think these things work. They think if they imitate the coming of the Messiah and all that, they could reverse something. I mean, obviously, Satan knows this is not going to work, but he wants as many people as in hell as possible. All right? And it's not like he's the Lord of hell. That's another foolishness people abide by. He's going to be punished in hell. He's Lord of nothing. And then what else they believe in, which God uses also to deceive them. They try to tell you, in fact, the Bible says something like, God always tells his plan ahead before to his chosen ones. So you see, they imitate that. They tell you what they're gonna do. They don't tell you outright. Maybe you were listening to the Daily Show when they were talking about somebody making a plan for 2018, and then what's his name laughed, and he's like there's gonna be a 2018, and people laugh. They're like, oh, he's funny, ha ha ha. These people are telling you what they see. They're telling you what they think. They have to tell you because it's part of their belief and it's part of them mocking you. And you see these music shows, everybody lifting their hands up. The jinns are laughing at you. While they are laughing at you, they're like, these people don't even know where you're called. The jinns are laughing at them. They're feeding off of your energy. And we know from the hadiths that the jinns get sustenance from bones. So I don't know. I guess there's something in the bones that they eat. So it should not surprise you that Nephilim and things like that eat children. And they make these people who think there is actual power in magic, that if they do the same things, and you see people tell you about how they made a deal with the aliens that give us some of your people, then we'll give you the technology. They're just going by their desire, man, just eating people just as they used to. And they some of them who don't know everything or don't know anything, they hope that if their plan is right, um, then when the Messiah comes, they would be able to have life on earth, and then they don't need human beings anymore. They could be cloning you so that now they can have their people that they eat, because I guess it's a delicacy or something. But you think you're gonna be like they're gonna give you some kind of high status, and the genes, if they've possessed your body and your body gets old, and they have clones, they don't need your body anymore. They deceive you as well. So at the end of the day, you're all being led to the slaughter. So yeah, the genes get sustenance from bones, but we eat flesh. But we eat flesh that's allowed and flesh that's forbidden, and we stay from flesh that's forbidden. So yeah, you have the good genes who are religious and they eat the things that are right. All right, maybe they're allowed to eat bones from animals, but not bones from human beings. I mean, or their marrow or whatever. I don't know what the substance comes from. Maybe it's an iron thing, or I don't know, hemoglobin or whatever. So you can see a lot of the similarities and understand what they're trying to do, because they're trying to imitate God. What else do we know? God is all seeing, right? So now they want technology so that you have cameras everywhere. So their imitation is a false imitation, and they hope that when the Messiah comes, they will be able to have that live in this plane in a way that's similar to how they were able to live when there was no dome, so to speak. I think, and so still feel enough power. All right, and then they have all these human beings who've given them all these clones and things they're gonna be eating. But here's the thing: we were talking about Gog and Magog. They're gonna shoot their arrows in the sky to try to kill the gods, as they thought they were going to, as they thought those were gods. So in fact, all right, all these dynamics they created with nuclear weapon. In fact, the genes are just waiting. They're stockpiling. I don't know if some of these leaders believe that they have to play the game and then eventually that would decide. You know what I mean? Or they just like, no, let's not, let's keep it, let's pretend. I don't know what exactly it is. But in fact, the genes are deceiving them. The genes, the genes and Gog and Magog. And Gog and Magog are going to use those arrows, those nuclear weapons, I believe, to shoot into the skies, maybe to destroy the dome and to attack the angel. But this will be after the Messiah comes. So when the Messiah comes and with the angels, um, and I'm talking about the real Messiah, Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus the son of Mary. His coming is going to destroy their Messiah, the false Messiah, the liar, the Antichrist. And then it is after that destruction that Gog and Magog will descend from every elevation. All right. It is then they would descend and try to quote unquote kill the gods. And when the arrows come with evidence, as if yes, we've indeed killed the gods, then they're gonna think, yeah, we've killed the gods, and they're gonna be happy about that. But I think Gog and Magog are Nephilim that live in what we call the 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 hole in the Arctic, or the Arctic area. So yeah, they're just trying to control you, have you for their food, because they see you as livestock. Honestly, they don't have much respect for you know. And that's why sometimes, yeah, it's interesting to see how they work. All right, the same arrogance they have, and even those who have allowed themselves to be possessed by devils, they also have the arrogance, and that's why sometimes you would see they would put somebody in a position that you think, why him? Why not somebody else? Because sometimes you need a high-ranking member to be in a position where maybe you can make fun of other high-ranking members. They're not just gonna put uh, every Jack and Jill in a position where you can insult your leaders and 33-degree Freemasons. You see what I mean? So they want to give this idea that they can create a world, and be like God, be all seeing and have control over everything. And God says we believe in predestiny, as I said, but that is based on God's knowledge and wisdom. But whereas their control, all right, they want it so that it's by numbers, they can predict everything. If the economy is like this, they can predict it and manipulate it in order to get a certain result. You see what I mean? So that everything they can control, they have control over. So in this respect, they're just trying to imitate God. Oh yeah, one more thing. I didn't address the issue about the Dajjal who was met in the island, and the fact that the prophet said the Dajjal will be a Jewish boy. All right, a heavily built Jewish boy. I mean, it might be the same person, but I think what is gonna happen is, I don't know what state this Dajjal is in right now, his condition, but I think it's his consciousness that's gonna transfer into this person. I guess it's not a long argument, really. It's not. That's all there is. But then again, you see it like they have the idea of the resurrection of their Messiah. So in fact, they're trying to imitate. But what they've done is they've actually lied to you, because Jesus was never crucified in the cross. Somebody else was made to look like Jesus. And in fact, there were some Christian sects that believed this. But once the Romans got hold of Christianity, then they started like, they chose that story more. It's similar to their pagan stories. Nimrod, Osiris, Horus, who was also one-eyed. Odin was also crucified, resurrected on the third day. So, and they've looked at the skies and they've mapped it and they've made the Bible resemble it. You see what I mean? So they've made it resemble reality. And even if you look at the face that Jesus has, all right, on the cross, he resembles the gay lover of King James. That's the person people are bowing to. Jesus never said, "Pray to my mother." A priest saw two ladders. Mary was on one, Jesus was on the other one, he said. He tried to climb the ladder with Jesus. He wasn't able. So he tried to climb the ladder with Mary. He was able. Then he said, you know what? A son would not refuse the request of his mother. That's why you always have Jesus as a baby. So you pray to his mother. What? Mary cannot hear you. Why would Mary? Even Jesus cannot hear you. You only pray to God. It's God who would allow intercession. It's not because you call upon Mary you're going to be interceded for. Even if you worship Jesus from morning to evening, intercession will not be allowed for you. In fact, for that reason, intercession will not be allowed for you. So like Jesus said, say, Lord, Lord, whatever. I mean, yeah. But the last thing then is, so this is why 999 out of 1,000 will be Gog and Magog. Because your leaders, all right, they've adopted the ways of Gog and Magog. Think about how the kingdom of Saudi Arabia was established. They said this man came to Al Saud and he says, hey, let's make this deal, I'll control the religious aspect. You would be the king. I mean, you would make it a monarchy. It sounds like this story with the temptation of Satan and Jesus. Why don't I'll give you all this. You know what I mean? Let me control the religion. They do it all the time. Look, the Turkish guy who eliminated the caliphate. And even before that, they were doing a lot of things. They took over the church and made it into a mosque. That was an unjust thing to do. I mean, it shows you that they deal with the outside beauty. They don't look with the inside. That's why you see most of them changing their bodies, forcing people to change in their bodies, because they only see on the outside. If it feels good, we got to do it. If eating humans it feels good, let's do it. If raping women and children it feels good, let's do it. If partying and dancing it feels good, let's do it. So yeah, most of your leaders, they've been manipulated by Gog and Magog and those that are from Gog and Magog. And now they are acting like Gog and Magog. And in fact, they're causing corruption on the earth. But you follow your leaders and you follow what they do. You allow them to manipulate you. Why? Because you yourself do not seek righteousness. All right? God will give you the leader that resembles the people you are. All right. And in fact, God is going to turn people into animals because they refuse to walk like human beings. They refuse to lift their head up and walk upright and look for the way. They put their head down and they allow themselves to be led like cattle. That's why God says in the Quran, some of the people are like livestock. Some of them, maybe even worse, because livestock is made like that. But you are made like a human being. Why you don't behave like a human being? So I think once you figure the explanations out, then it makes sense that you don't have to be a Nephilim to be from Gog and Magog. You just have to imitate their lifestyle, all right, and follow your leaders and accept them when they tell you, "Oh, this is freedom, this is equality, this is love." Uh, we we're free to change our bodies. We should not change the creation of God. That's what Islam is. That's what the truth is based on. All right. You should not be genetically modifying things and stuff like that. But guess what? You follow the movements. You in gay pride parades. You in transgender parades. Let's live and let's live. You've abandoned the Sharia. You're like, oh, I prefer the constitution of so and so country over the Sharia. Are you serious? You see, so you've decided to be from Gog and Magog. All right. So the prophet wasn't wrong, and even the gospel wasn't wrong when they said, "I'll pick you one out of 1,000." That is the dwellers of paradise, and 999 out of 1,000 for the dwellers of hell, and they are Gog and Magog. So in fact, all the disbelievers and corruptors are basically Gog and Magog. Um, I think that's it, really. I hope this makes sense. And I think maybe I was in a little bit of a hurry doing it. Maybe I spoke a little bit too fast too because I think there was a lot of information. Because if I had spoken slowly as well, look how long this took. So I hope it makes some chronological sense to people, and hopefully they can tie it all together and benefit from it. Anyway, guys, good luck with your search for truth. Okay, cheers.